Welcome to Tucker Carlson. Today, Anthony Pellicano, probably the most famous private investigator and fixer in the history of Hollywood. He spent about 15 years behind bars because he didn't rat out his clients. He didn't say a word. In total, he's had one of the most interesting lives of any living American, and so we are honored to have him join us in the set today. Anthony Pellicano, thanks so much for joining us.
Nice to be here. Pleasure.
So I just said before we went on camera, I said, you've had one of the most interesting lives of anyone I've ever met, and you said I'm a very uninteresting person. I said, I don't think that's true. Yeah. So tell us, okay, so
this is going to be the most boring, conversation you've ever had.
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. You're from Chicago. I can hear it in your voice. Tell us where you grew up and how.
Well, Italian neighborhood in Chicago, from Taylor Street to Chicago Avenue to Cicero. Every single Italian neighborhood you could think of, that's where I grew up on.
What'd your dad do?
My dad was a truck driver.
Yep.
That was it.
So you grew up in an old-fashioned city in an old-fashioned time.
In Chicago during those days, you had your villages.
Yeah.
You understand? The Polish villages, the Irish villages. That was when ethnicity meant something.
Yes.
Today, there's no ethnicity.
But in Chicago especially, you think of that as an Lithuanian neighborhood.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So your neighborhood was explicitly Italian.
Explicitly Italian, and then some Jewish people and some, black people. And this is around Chicago's Loop, which is the center. We lived in the first ward, which was the powerhouse of Chicago at that time. Daley
was mayor.
Yeah. He was.
So what was it like? Did you like growing up there?
Oh, God, yeah. I wouldn't give my childhood up for nothing. I mean, that's when people were, loyal and honorable and, everybody, you could live. There was no political correctness then. I'm probably the most politically incorrect person on the planet because of that.
Yeah.
But that's when people were close, or people were patriotic. People put flags out on, and were happy to be in America. And I'm Italian, I'm Sicilian, and came from the background where it meant something to be an American.
Yeah. Did your grandparents come here?
Yes, yes.
Did you know them?
Oh, sure, yeah. My grandmother was the most wonderful woman in the world, and she was more like my mother than my mother. My mother was more like my sister. But to do it over again, never. I wouldn't give up my childhood for anything.
When you say people are loyal, what do you mean by that?
Because friendship meant something then. You were loyal to your friends. You were honorable to your friends. It's not like that today.
No, it's not.
No.
When you were a kid, what did you think you wanted to do with your life?
Well, I was out on my own when I was about 14 years old, so I, traveled around and did a little this and a little that. But
can you be a lot more specific?
No, not really. But I wanted to be an opera star. I wanted to be a tenor. So I took some lessons, and they told me now go to Italy and make a name for yourself. And I couldn't afford the lessons. So instead of going stage right, I went stage left. And I went into another area.
Another area.
Yeah. And then at one point in time, then I went into the service. When I got into service, I was a cryptographer in the service. When I came out, there was no jobs for a cryptographer.
So just for our audience who are of a different generation, at the time, they basically administered aptitude tests to everybody going in the Army, and if you were smart, you became a cryptographer. So clearly,
I didn't know I had a high IQ until I went into the Army, and then found out I had an IQ of 167. And they said, "What do you want to do, young man?" And I looked around the room. I didn't have a clue, and I saw a magazine sitting on a desk that said electronics. So I said electronics, and from there I go to Fort Gordon, Georgia, and they made me a cryptographer. Then from there I evaded or I shouldn't say evaded. I didn't become part of the war effort, I mean? Because then it was Indochina.
Yes.
And then when I got to France, where I was stationed, it became Vietnam. So I missed the whole Vietnam experience, luckily.
Even though you're in the service at the time?
Yeah, because I had what they call a critical MOS, a critical, job. But then I came out and there was nothing to do, and I looked in the want ads like everybody else. I had little things that I was doing on the side, of course, but there was a ad for a collector and a catalog company, and from there a segue to become a skip tracer who locates people who run out, and I became very good at locating missing people.
What's a collector?
Collector is the guy who collects bills. You know, when you're working for the catalog, well, I was working for a catalog company, and people didn't pay their bills. You had people in the company who tried to collect the money from them.
How hard is that?
Well, I didn't want to listen to people telling me they didn't have the money to pay their bills, and that's why when I looked across the hall, there was a line of desks on this side, a line of desks on that side, and those were people who were script tracers. Those were people who looked for the people who ran out on their debts. And I became very good at it. And then one day I was looking through the yellow pages and I saw ads in private investigation agency locating missing people. So I said, hell. So I found the biggest detective agency and I told them, give me your hardest case. And if I find that person, I want to come to work from you. And I did.
How'd you find the person?
It was easy. It really was easy. There was 2 FBI agents who ran the company, and they weren't very fond of people like me, so I didn't stay with them very long. But then I...
Wait, why weren't they fond of people like you?
You do a background check, and they thought I was part of the Mothers and Fathers Italian Association. So... Anyway,
I've never heard that phrase before.
It's an interesting phrase. Anyway, so I then had to go through all kinds of machinations to become a private investigator, and I got very well known at locating missing people. I located just about everybody I was hired to find, and from that into electronics, and from that rolled it around, and then I got into the Hollywood scene. I had a lot.
Can I just back up one sec? How do you find missing people?
It's easy. You find the one person in the world that knows where they are, and then get them to tell you.
That doesn't sound very easy.
Well, it takes a lot of effort sometimes. There was a lot of cases that were really tough, and I had one specific case where I found a girl buried on the side of a mountain in Honolulu after 5 years of her parents going through all kinds of governmental agencies, et cetera, and different detective agencies. And they came 2 years prior to that to hire me, and then didn't. And then 2 years later came to hire me. And then I found her in about 2 weeks. Buried on the side of a mountain in Honolulu.
Did you find out who did it?
Oh yeah.
Did he go away?
He was away. He was in prison at the time, and I had a long talk with him, and he decided to tell me where the body was buried.
So it sounds like you brought skills from your earlier life into this new job.
Well, I'm a street guy. Yeah. You understand? All the logic and common sense in the world that I had accumulated through life experience is what was really the center of how I was able to do things. I mean, the intelligence is nice it's nice to be intelligent. It's nice. Yeah. But having logic and common sense is more important. And I had a great deal of perception. A lot of the times I found people that nobody else could find because of perception. I tried to become the people that I was trying to find, and I did.
Put yourself in their position. Where would you go if you were them?
What happened, and problem solving to me was you have to first define the problem before you could solve it, right?
Right.
You have to define it. And once you define it, and then you go through the machinations and permutations and everything you have to do to get to that place. But like I said, when people ask me, how do you find people? I said, I don't look for the person I'm trying to find. I look for the one person that knows where they are.
And there's always someone.
Oh yeah, there's all. It's interesting. People when they run, they don't change their dates of birth. They use the same initials. I mean, it's crazy. But you do what you need to do to get to that point. and you sit and you meditate a lot, and you use logic and common sense. I use a lot of what I call a subliminal, reasoning, subconscious reasoning. We all have two brains. One brain is while you're awake. That's, your conscious brain. And the other works 24 hours a day. So what I used to do, and have done for years, is I make off like there's this trap door in my brain. And I have a problem that I need to solve. And I open up the trap door and I throw it in there and let it cook. Many times you're in the shower and
Yes.
something will come to you and you go, oh, now I know what. Or you're driving along in the car and something will come to you. If you have the information and experience and capabilities to solve that problem, you will. If not, it keeps cooking. And if you face a problem you can solve, you solve it and you don't worry about it. You face a problem you can't solve, you don't worry about it.
Right.
So that was the key to me, is using logic and common sense to formulate, a scenario where I could find people.
And keep the mental oven full of problems that are.
Oh yeah, and just even till today, I've got things rolling around my mind right now that I'm trying to solve.
How do you meditate? How do you get the headspace necessary to pull the problem out of the oven and see if it's done?
You don't. You throw it in there and it cooks.
Yeah.
And it'll come to the surface, just like when you're in the shower and
Yes.
everybody's experienced this.
That's right.
I mean, everybody on the planet has experienced this, and it just comes, but you let it cook, and your memory is always there. You always have that information. It never leaves your brain. You may think that you forgot about things, but you really haven't. And when you go through the experience that I just went, when I went to college for a long time, so you learn to capture that information. You sit. And it took me about 7 years to learn how to play back, I call memory movies. Okay, because when you're away, you have nothing. And you want to remember the good things. And of course, there's all kinds of bad things that happen too. So you learn how to separate that and just play the memory movies of things that you enjoyed.
That's right.
Your children and your family and your life, you know what I mean? So
So in a business like yours, people lie to you all the time. They have information, you want it, they don't want to give it to you, they lie to you about it. How do you tell when someone's lying? How do you perceive deception? Are you good at that?
I'm very good at that, but that is a talent that's hard to describe, because what you're looking for is the truth, and you may know part of that truth to start out with. So if somebody is trying to deceive you or push you away from the path that you're going on, trying to get away from what it is that you're trying to find out, it's easy to detect. But I've told this to people all the time. When you're dealing with human beings, anything is possible. Anything. So you keep that in mind. And if a person wants to deceive you, they're going to use an effort to deceive you. And what you do is you look for that effort to deceive. You don't look for the lie. You look for the effort.
Interesting.
Yes.
So how do you get from Chicago looking for missing people to Los Angeles and become this person that a lot of very famous people rely on to fix their problems?
187 degree below zero wind chill factor day, too many. On Lake Michigan, the tears in my eyes are frozen to the side of my face. I'm looking for a person with a cigarette lighter to heat up my key so I can open the door of my car. And I had been going back and forth to Los Angeles, meeting clients and all that, because I've been, called for. And just decided, that's it. And got 1982, moved to LA, and that was it.
What did you do when you got there?
What did I do?
Yeah.
I don't understand that question.
Who did you work for?
Oh, you mean who did I? Well,
yeah.
The first case that I got to when I got to LA was the DeLorean case. My office had called and said, John DeLorean wants to talk to you. And I said, well, I'm in LA. And they said, well, actually, he's in LA. So then I met with a bunch of lawyers, about 7 lawyers at a table, and they were all discussing FBI conspiracy and British intelligence conspiracy and all that. And I piped up and said, "You're all full of shit." And I says, "Excuse me?" I says, "DeLorean is conning the informant is conning the government is conning the informant. It's this circle that's going around." I says, "Do you really believe that John DeLorean was sitting in his office on Fifth Avenue conspiring with a man in California to import China white heroin into the United States? You really believe that?" And they all looked at me like, "Well, no." I says, "Well, there you go. So the informant is the bad guy. So we have to attack the informant." And then, long story short, we won.
So DeLorean was not guilty?
No, he was not guilty. DeLorean wanted to fund his car company. And as long as the money went into the bank and we got washed with everybody else's money, he didn't care how it came out, because you don't know till today if the money that you're borrowing from a bank was laundered money from you don't know. I mean, it's money. You just want to borrow the money. And these guys try to conspire, and the FBI and the DEA pulled all kinds of machinations to try to trap him. I mean, it's a very long story, but at the end of the day, it all became, public and knowledgeable, and found not guilty. And he wasn't.
Yeah, destroyed his life, though.
Huh?
It destroyed his life, though.
Not really.
Not really.
Not really. It was, he went through some hell. I mean, everybody goes through, a measure of hell from time to time. And he went through it. I mean, but you got to man up. That's it. Like everything else in life, you man up. That's the hard part for me, was coming out of prison into a world full of rats and stool pigeons and tattletales and wimps. I said to myself, where are all the men? What happened to all the men in this country? I mean, I came.
So you were away for over 15 years. You come back to
more than 15 years, but you come into a new planet.
How long?
Well, about 17 years.
17 years. So that was there was a lot of change in the country during that time.
Sure. And when you're in prison, and especially if you're a remote location like I was for a long time, you don't see any of that. The guys in prison like to watch, crazy TV shows, so you don't watch much TV. And if you don't get newspapers, you don't know what's going on in the world. But it's such a radical change from what I was used to, that coming out into a world like that was a big culture shock.
That's fascinating. First of all, let me just say, I've known a number of people who've been in prison for a while, and they're all angry. And you don't seem angry. You don't seem bitter.
About what? What's there to be angry about? I mean...
But you know what I'm talking about. A lot of guys get out there mad.
But anger is a feeling. I mean, just like fear is a feeling. It's a feeling. I mean, I chose the life that I led. So I'm not going to apologize for it. And I'm not going to be a different person. When I came out, everybody says, "You're the same guy." I said, "Well, what did you expect?" The prison system, is awful. I mean, what happens to people in prison today is awful. But you're sitting. That's all you're doing. You're sitting and waiting. They take away your time. They take away part of your life. And you just have to find some form of life while you're in there. I did mathematics. I did play chess. I learned to do high-level geometrical problems. I read 2,000 books. You do everything you can to escape. You remember, when you're in prison, every day you're escaping. You find a way with the time that you're spending in there to escape from prison. So you read a book, you're escaping. You understand? You do mathematical problems, you're escaping. You play chess, you're escaping. So every day, what you try to do is find something during that day that allows you to escape from where you are. And that's what I did. And then you come out, you understand, and you're still the same person, usually. You might have some trauma, and I've seen a lot of guys come out, and a lot of guys go in and cry and all that, but I wasn't that man. I was strong. I was strong when I went in, and I became stronger coming out. That's what I decided to do while I'm in there. Educate myself, become more educated, become more knowledgeable in all walks of life and everything else. Learn to experience what these other guys are going through. That's another life experience. Just grab and suck in and suck people's brains dry and learn as much as you can, because you're going to be there. You know, the government is the most powerful. I can't imagine anything more powerful than the United States government. And they can do with you as they wish. And they take away your life. You get convicted of a crime, they take away that life from you. So, you know, to me, okay, I led the life I lived. I don't apologize for anything. I did what I did, you understand? And I chose that life. So why would I be angry about the government taking away part of that life because I was convicted?
Did you meet?
And I refused to be a rat. I refused to tell on my clients. I refused to cooperate with the government. And I was ashamed of, by coming into prison and everybody walking to the door wanted to make some kind of plea deal. If every person went to trial, this entire justice system would close down overnight. It would be impossible for them to run this government. I'm talking about the judicial system. If everybody fought, they'd have to close it down. They couldn't do it. So what the government does is they push people into informing on each other and making plea deals, so they get one guy and they let some others go. And that appalled me. That disgusted me. Any kind of a paid informant disgusts me. Yeah, and you know. So I tutored a lot of guys.
How much pressure did they put on you to rat out your clients?
All kinds of pressure, but you know, when you talk about pressure, it's actually nonsense, because if you have any degree of intelligence at all, you see through it. You know, why would I? And I told all my clients and all my employees to tell the truth. I don't want you to go to prison for something that I did. You get on the stand and you tell the truth. And they gave 13 people immunity, and they gave other people, and I told all my clients. And when my clients got on the stand, I protected them. I says, you didn't do this, did you? And they said, no. And, and the judge got upset with me. She says, you're even protecting them while you're on trial. I says, yes. If a person comes to you with a problem and hires you, and you have honor and you have, loyalty to that client, why would you turn on them? All of the people I did things for, they wanted me to write books about, all the celebrities and what everybody did and didn't do. No, fuck no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to stay loyal. Honor and loyalty and keeping my word is the most important thing to me. And I did that. And I continue to do that. And I will do that till I am no more. But right now I'm above the green, so I'm all right.
Were your clients grateful to you?
A lot of them were, and a lot of, listen, this is something you need to learn. When people need you, they love you.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Okay. When they need you, they love you. And people forget what you do for them. But listen, that's how I supported my family, how I made a living. They paid me. I did what I needed to do to help them, to solve their problem. So what's there to be upset about?
Why do you think I followed your case in the popular press. I don't know the truth of it at all. I don't know any more than I've read in the New York Times. Mm-hmm. But I never understood why the government, the Justice Department, went after you. A lot of criminals out there. Even the things that you were convicted of didn't strike me as appalling sins. Why you?
I got a lot of time. I got more time than I should have gotten because I didn't rat.
Yeah.
Because I didn't inform. And by the way, I had a history of beating the government a lot. So, I had a forensic laboratory. I coined the term forensic audio. And I worked on lots of cases that the governments couldn't solve. One of them was the Birmingham bombing case. Those poor, unfortunate girls that died
yes.
because of that. Well, I got a phone call from a guy, from a U.S. attorney who said, we'd like you to examine some tape recordings. I said, you're a U.S. attorney, use the FBI lab. He says, well, they weren't able to help us. So I said, well, why are you calling me? Because we heard you're the best. I said, well, what is this about? It's about a case that happened a long time ago. I said, well, to make a long story short, they had these tapes from 1965 that were, you know, noise laden, and they needed me to clean them up to clarify them so that they can listen to what was said. The government at that time, in 65, they had a tape recorder in the trunk of a guy's car, and they had a bug in his house. Anyway, so they hired me, and I said yes, and 6 weeks later, I cleaned up the tapes and I sent them the CDs, and they said, boy, we really wish that we could use this one tape recording, you know, because it would be very helpful. So my question is, well, why can't you use it? He says, because he's talking to his wife, and there's the marital privilege. So you could imagine dead silence, and I said, why do you think he was only talking to his wife? What? I said, there's another man in the room. He's having a conversation with this. Anyway, make a long story short, they convict him based on me. So the U.S. attorney, who then became a senator, by the way, that U.S. attorney, you know, glorified me in the press, glorified me, you know, in the books.
Who was it?
I don't want to mention names.
Yep.
Anyway, he glorified me in the press. He glorified me all over the place. And then came my trial. And the U.S. attorney asked him, if you had to hire Anthony Pellicano all over again, would you do it? He said, no. Piece of shit. People love you when they need you.
But when you
so
become
he got
unpopular.
he got all that glamour because of me. That case would have never been solved without me. But when it came time, he was a U.S. attorney. When another U.S. attorney asked him, if you had it to do all over again, would you hire him? He said no. Think about that for a second. 5 beautiful little girls got killed, and he said no.
Were there people who were loyal to you while you were away?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm lucky to have some really, really true loyal friends. You know, Ron Meyer, who
Yeah.
you know, was the, you know, executive at Universal for 25 years. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have had toothpaste. I wouldn't have had underwear. He gave me commissary every month for the entire time I was in prison.
No way.
Yes. And then when I came out, he helped with other people, got me an apartment, got me a car.
Ron Meyer did that? I've always
Yes.
liked Ron Meyer.
Ron Meyer is probably, he's my brother. Let me put it to you clear.
He's
He
a
is
studio
my
head.
brother.
I don't think he ever went to college. He was a boxer. Am I getting this wrong?
He was in the Marines.
Yeah.
You know, he did all kinds of shit. Yeah. He started out in the mailroom like a lot of other people did, but he became, you know, a powerful agent. And then he took over, you know, Universal for 25 years. Yeah. He is my brother. I'm not closer to another male on the planet than I am to him. He was there for me every single moment of the time that I was in. And there were other people too.
That's amazing.
Well, you know, to me, the word friend is meaningful. I don't call people a friend. I have buddies, I have acquaintances, you know, because you meet people in life. But a friend is something that you can rely on, as somebody that you go to the mattresses with. You understand?
Yeah.
Somebody that you can rely on 100%, who's loyal to you. See, loyalty, honor, and word, those things mean more to me than anything. And by the way, when they take everything away from you, that's what's left. And by the way, that's what's most important.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Did you meet other guys in prison who had the same view of life?
Not many.
Not many.
Not many, no. But I'll tell you one thing, that I met a lot of honorable guys, you know. The more honorable than I met in Hollywood, I can tell you that.
Is that true? Did you meet interesting people?
Not really.
Not really.
No. You know, there were interesting situations and comical situations that you come across. But an interesting person, no, not really.
How many people read 2,000 books when they were away?
Oh, I'm sure a lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but see, you have to understand, I'm a speed reader, and
Yeah.
I get to the sex parts and I flip through it because I'm not interested in that, and I go on and and that also I read thrillers to try to see how the authors were concocting this story and whether or not they were leaving too many clues to solve it. You understand? So these were challenges for me, and then I come out and I just wrote a book and sat down and wrote a book.
So tell me, before you get to the book, what did you notice? I'm just interested. I mean, you are the kind of proverbial man from another planet who shows up in America after 17 years. What do you notice that's different about the country?
Like I said, I mean, the politically correctness disgusts me. You understand? We never had that growing up. I never had that problem with other ethnic groups. I never had that immense hatred that I feel in this country now. The talk about racism and all, it's all bullshit. It's all nonsense. Everything is nonsensical. It doesn't make when you live in a country this great, I mean, there's nothing better than America. I mean, people don't get it. There's nothing better than America. You have opportunities here that you can't get anywhere else. People want to come into this country because they want those opportunities. And the love of country is gone. The patriotism is gone. And I don't understand that because it's not logical.
Yeah.
It seems like there is this massive amount of it's almost like the country's become a cult. You understand? This massive brainwashing, and you listen to news reports and they're so contradictory, to what's really reality and what's really truthful, and then you try to analyze that and you say to yourself, well, okay, there used to be 3 networks at one time. Now there's all kinds of news organizations and there's all kinds of things. So everybody's competing for the same story and all that. So they need to concoct stories. They need to lie. And that's the thing that bothers me the most, is that the American people get lied to every day and they still accept it. You can't accept being lied to. You have to stop that. You have to stop those people who are lying to you from lying to you. And you have to realize that it is a lie. And then you have to go on and you have to seek the truth. Or at least acknowledge that there is a truth behind every story. So that I can say that I'm just ashamed of what America has become today. I am ashamed of it.
You said a minute ago that when you got out, you looked around and you thought, where are all the men?
That's true. Well, a lot of women tell me that too, but
yeah, they do.
There's not. I like men who take over and solve things, and like in the communities, like in the neighborhoods, there were men who took care of the problems. In neighborhoods, you didn't see the kind of crime that you see now, and I know that there are going to be a lot of people that are going to maybe disagree with me, but when organized crime ruled Chicago, there wasn't anything like the crime that there is now, because we didn't allow it. It didn't happen. Your neighborhoods, in your neighborhood, you protected your neighbors. You understand? Like I said, little villages.
I think everyone knows what you're saying is true.
Yeah, and you protected your neighbors and your family, and you didn't allow these kinds of things to happen. You didn't allow for that to happen.
So it didn't even get to the police. It would be fixed in the neighborhood.
Fuck yeah, absolutely. We took care of things ourselves. You know what I mean? And that's the way it should be. And by the way, that was what made the political machine in Chicago so strong. Was backed by organized crime, because you understand, everybody knew the rules and everybody knew what to do, and they had the one thing, respect. If you tell somebody not to do something, they better not do it. And they understood respect. People don't understand respect today.
So if you had kids driving around shooting each other, you had some drug addict lying on the sidewalk, waving his package at girls as they walk by. Like, what would you do about that?
That would never happen. First of all, the minute that did happen, somebody would take care of it. No police would be involved. It would be taken care of, and you'd never see that problem again. Or you might see a guy hanging from a light pole.
So that would solve the drive-by shooting.
Absolutely.
Or
Oh God, yeah. There wouldn't be anything. And by the way, that's cowardice. Guys that get in a car, you understand, they're protected by an automobile and fire bullets out of a window at passers-by, you understand, and little kids, they're cowards. They're not anything more than cowards. They're pieces of shit, you understand? But you got to go to the parents, though. What are you telling your kids? Why aren't you protecting your children from being, turning into those kinds of animals? If you get a kid, a 14-year-old kid, and you hand him a gun and say, you want to be part of the gang, you got to go shoot somebody. You don't have to kill him, but you have to shoot somebody, and you're a member of a gang. How much courage does it take to fire a gun out of a window of a passing car? How much courage? You want to have courage? Strap yourself up, get your opponent on the other side of you, and then let's see how much courage you got. You understand? That's what I'm talking about, men. There's no men. To allow that to happen in a community says a lot about the community.
Yeah, it does.
Sure. Why let that happen? Why ignore the fact that there's a loss of life, losses of life, and that the children are growing up like that and with that kind of mentality where they don't have any morals. They're not taught morals. They're not guided. You understand? So that's what happens as a result of it. But people in this country need to get together and they need to say to themselves, this is our country. We should love our country and we should do anything we can for the people that live in this country to be able to live normal lives, raise children without crime. You understand? Protect the police. You need the police. I mean, you want to go into a federal prison and spend some time with her, you'll be very happy that there was a cop that locked that son of a bitch up. You understand? Yeah, because you don't want that man, roaming the streets, raping your daughters, killing your children, infesting the country with drugs. You don't want that. So fight it. Be men. I need men to man up and say, I'm not going to allow this to happen. I'm not going to allow my children to be able to have to live in a country like this. And stop being wimpy. Stop apologizing. I just can't stand that. They apologize for this kind of behavior. Why apologize for a behavior that's abhorrent to everything else that's going on in the country?
I agree.
Why? But there you go. It's all up here. It's a mental state. People have become brainwashed. I'm hoping that one day America wakes up and says no more. And that's the end of it.
I've never understood how people with families with kids could live in a city and there's some junkie living on the sidewalk across the street from your house, relieving himself on the sidewalk, shooting drugs in public, screaming at people. Like, why would you allow that?
Well, that's exactly the point. The point is you become brainwashed to say that's okay. We want to, this liberal type attitude, we want to leave those people alone, let them live their life. That's bullshit. You don't want that in your neighborhood. You don't want a drug dealer living next door to you. Throw him out of the window. You understand? Let him bounce a couple times on the ground and maybe he'll come to his senses. You don't want that. You don't want anybody around your children and your family that's going to be detrimental to you and to the way you want to live your life and how you want to raise your children. I mean, I'm 77 years old. I don't know how many years I've got left. But for those years that I got left, I want to make sure that my family is protected. I want to make sure that I live, in a country that I can be proud of. I want to see that happen. And I'm hoping this country wakes up one day.
I hope so too. It's just what an irony that when the mafia controlled Chicago, it was a much better place for kids to live, and there was much less crime than there
Without
is
any
now.
question. You know what? Because they didn't allow crime. You didn't see women afraid to walk down the streets. You didn't see kids, getting killed in drive-by shootings. You didn't see none of that. None of that happened during that period of time because there was a force behind the government. There was a force that in those neighborhoods, the precinct captains, the aldermen, you understand, made sure that that neighborhood was safe and it was all controlled.
Amazing. So you get out of prison after reading 2,000 books, and you decide to write one, which makes sense. What's it about? Why'd you write it?
It's a book called The Neighborhood, and it's about two young men. One wants to be, they're like brothers. They're very, very close. They were born to unwed mothers because of circumstances, and they became very powerful, strong friends in bond. One decides to become an FBI agent, of all things, from that neighborhood, and is ostracized, he goes through hell because he wants to become an FBI agent, and the other goes the other direction. You understand? And this is their story.
Wow. How long did it take you to write it?
About 6 weeks.
6 weeks?
Yeah, 490 pages.
I've written some books, so I know. It's like, I can't type that fast.
Well, the interesting thing is I never thought about it. So, but the people were pushing me to write a book. I said, okay. So I said, I'll write a novel. I'm not going to write a book about myself. And I wrote a novel. And now they want me to do the sequel. And, they wanted me to record the audiobook, which was a real trip.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know if you've done that yourself.
I have.
Okay. I never did that before, and I had to be different voices and all that. So it's really something.
It's not easy, is it?
Yeah. And then I producing a podcast called Chicago Crime Tales, which is, I'm doing. And now they're doing a documentary on me right now. So I got lots of things in the fire. None of which I've ever done before. So it's kind of interesting.
So the easy way, okay, so you get out of prison, obviously you need to make a living. The easy way out would be to write a book. I mean, you worked for, our viewers can look it up. You're a famous person.
I've been out of prison for over 2 years before I started to write a book.
No, but I'm just saying, you could have written a book, here are all the famous people I work with, and here are the secrets.
Listen to me, I got offered $500,000 just to tell the truth about Michael Jackson. And I said, no, I won't rat on anybody.
Even someone who's deceased.
Even somebody who's deceased. Why? Where's the honor in that? Where's the honor? No. I know what happened, and I know what I did about it. You understand? That's all that's important to me.
You don't need to tell other people about it.
No, why? What, for money? No. No, thank you. I could, Ronnie, my brother has been pushing me. He says, well, you don't have to mention names. You don't have to do this. Just tell how you would handle things. I said, well, I might be interested in that. But every person that I've come across, every producer, every documentary producer, every person that's come to me, first thing out of their mouth is, tell me about this.
Yeah. You work for all these famous people. Who are they sleeping with?
Yeah.
I mean, obvious question.
No. And I said no. And I continue to say no. No. Why would I go to prison and spend all that time in prison, you understand, and then tell on people? Does that make any sense to you?
No, it doesn't.
No. So, the attitude that I went in with is the attitude I came out with, and it's the attitude I'll die with. I'm never going to tell on my clients.
Maybe that's why you're not angry, because you're at peace with yourself and your conscience.
What's there to be angry about?
No, but I love that. I love that. I mean, you can tell when a man's at rest inside, and you are.
Well, yeah, I love myself. I can look at in the mirror and say, I love you, and mean it. I've got all the confidence in the world. I've never lacked confidence, ever. You understand? And I'm going to tell you this. I don't know if it's going to make a lot of sense to your viewers, but there was like a poem by Lao Tzu that had an immense effect on my life. A man who knows how to live can walk abroad without fear of tiger or rhinoceros. In him, the tiger has no place to use his claw, or the rhinoceros a place to place his horn. He will not die because there's no place for death to enter. What that means to me is total, absolute fucking confidence that you can conquer anything, including death. I heard that poem when I was like 14 years old, stood with me. One other thing, when I was a little boy, my mother went to a place called Woolworth's and she got a couple little lithographs. One she hung in with my sister and one in mine. Mine was a little girl standing under an umbrella in the pouring rain with really exaggerated raindrops, if you can picture this in your head, in a puddle of water. Underneath it, it said, "Come what may." Every morning I woke up, I saw that. Every night before I went to sleep, I saw that. And subliminally, it stuck. Come what may. Whatever fucking comes, I can handle it. I'll take care of it. I'm not worried. Confidence.
I love that.
Come what may.
So without betraying the confidence of the people for whom you worked, give us your assessment of Hollywood. You were at the very center of it.
Well, you're talking about Hollywood then or Hollywood now?
The Hollywood that you knew, that you lived in.
Hollywood, it was decadent. I mean, everything that you could imagine going on went on, you know. And the reason I made so much money is because people got themselves into trouble and needed to get out. And they couldn't go to law enforcement, you know, so they would go to their agents, or they would go to their managers or lawyers, and lawyers would hire
So give
me.
us a hypothetical problem that they will want you to solve. No names, but just like what are you kind of thing you're talking about?
Well, you have the Me Too movement now.
Yeah.
There was no such thing as a Me Too movement then.
Yeah.
You understand? So, you know, there were women who would do whatever they could to get, you know, next to a movie star or to make money, and or athletes, especially athletes, you know, and sleep with them, become pregnant so they get an annuity.
Yeah.
Or, you know, try to extort them for large sums of money. Or, you know, you've done something with a woman, your wife doesn't know about it, you're a celebrity, you could, you know, it could cost you a lot of money should somebody disclose this, you know, and I'd come in and take care of it.
Can you be slightly more specific?
Well,
how would you fix that problem? You've got a professional athlete or an actor, a pregnant woman, not his wife.
you have to give that person who's trying to do those things a reason not to do it. And I gave him that reason. I mean, it's just as simple as that. I mean, you fix the problem. That's what I did. They call me a fixer. That's what I did. You know.
How hard is it to make that case to the person?
Being me, not too hard at all. But you know, but I mean, you have to. They have to look at you. They have to know that you're serious. I mean, you could do this the easy way, or you could do it the hard way. I don't give a fuck which way you choose, because you're going to do what I want you to do at the end of the day. Just that simple.
How forcefully did you have to make that case, or did people believe you?
Well, sometimes very forceful. I mean, you know, and a lot of times people would go run to other people to try to intercede, you know, and then I have to face those people too. But, you know, at the end of the day, I took care of it. And by the way, I always started out as a gentleman. Always. Always with reason. I always tried to reason with people. I didn't get to the point where I had to use other means unless reasoning didn't work, you know? So you just think about that.
What percentage would you say responded to reason?
Not more than 25%.
So you had to go to Plan B quite a bit.
Yeah, because these you know, especially the extorters. I mean, you know, with this Me Too movement, I mean, you know, casting room couches were common.
Yes.
For decades, you know, and women went along with that for decades. Now they don't go along with it any longer. Same thing with men. I mean, men, you know, gay men went through the same thing. It's no different for a man or a woman. If somebody wants to induce you and say that I'll do this for you if you don't have sex with me. That happens, and that happened a lot. But I took care of those things too. I mean, the one thing that I would never tolerate is a rape.
Yeah.
Not a fucking chance for a rape or child molestation.
Yes.
To me, a child, a rat is worse than a child molester, but they're right up there, if you understand.
Yeah.
So, that didn't happen. And if I saw things that my clients were doing that were abhorrent, I straightened my clients out too.
What kind of things would trigger that response? Like, what did you find abhorrent?
Well, if a woman came and said that he did this and I want money because he did this to me, and I would find out that my client actually did do that, I'd make him pay for it twice. Give the money to her, and then you're going to get straightened out. This is not going to happen again. I find out this happens again, and find the most reliable dentist that you have. You understand? Because you're going to need your teeth capped more than once. Okay? Yeah, and they listen to me.
Is there a lot of that kind of thing going on in LA?
Not now. Not now. I mean, everybody is so scared right now. It's like I told you, it's like a different planet. Everybody's afraid. I mean, I get these texts, and underneath the person's signature, it says pronouns. Her, she, his, him, they, them. I have a writer who just called me the other day, didn't know what we was going to do because she wrote a script. You understand that the network was going to produce, but they told her that she had to hire 2 transgender writers. Writers. And she says, I don't know any transgender people, let alone writers. Well, you have to find them. You have to have 2 trans. I mean, come on.
Is there a transgender writers union she could call, or?
She didn't know what to do, so she just turned the job down. I told her to do that. I says, you can't be forced to do things like that. And not only that, it's unfair to whoever is transgender to put them into a position that they're not going to be able to handle.
Right.
You understand? Why hire a writer who can't handle what you need them to do? So there's a lot of that going on now. I mean, gay people have rights. There's no question about it. I have a lot of great gay friends and know a lot of gay people. They have rights. I mean, what they went through. By the way, I'm doing a screenplay on Stonewall, for someone. What they went through to become, able to live their normal life was abhorrent. Everybody has a right to live. I don't care if you want to be a man or a woman, or you're a man and you decide to be a woman. That's your choice.
Yep.
But to force it down somebody's throat, to me, is not right. To force somebody to act in a way that, they wouldn't normally act because of something like that, to me, is abhorrent too.
And so when you were away, you had no sense that any of this was going on in American society.
Not a clue.
Do people talk about politics in federal prison?
Not really, because everybody's concerned about how they're going to get themselves out of prison,
right,
or what they're going to do while they're in prison. I mean, you'll always have people talking politics, but mostly nonsense. So, one of the things that I did is I refused to learn how to speak Spanish. Not that I have anything against the Spanish language. I speak Italian, but because I had to listen to all of the English speakers talking nonsense, why would I want to listen to the Spanish speakers talking nonsense too? Then I'm hearing 2 different languages at the same time about nonsense. You know what I mean? One thing I never had before I went to prison was tolerance. You go to prison, you learn tolerance overnight. You learn tolerance. If you don't learn to be tolerant, you're never going to survive in prison, because people do crazy things, and you're surrounded by people who do crazy things. If you let things bother you, you understand, that they're doing, and you don't have tolerance for what they're doing, you can go crazy.
Yeah.
You go out of your mind.
What was the hardest to get used to?
There's so many things.
maybe we shouldn't get down this path.
There's so many things. I mean, you know, there's so many things. When you put a person behind bars, and they're weak to start with, they become weaker.
Yeah.
You understand? And it's awful.
It's tough for weak men, isn't it?
What I hated is seeing these 18, 19-year-old kids who were brought up in a neighborhood where the survival was to sell drugs.
Yeah.
Getting sentences 15, 20 years. And you take that kid and you put him in a prison system, and then 20 years later you release him. What is he going to do?
Great question.
You haven't done anything for him while he's incarcerated to rehabilitate him, A, or to give him a sense of worth, or give him a occupation that he can go out and do. So what do you think that kid's going to do when he hits the streets? All he knows is how to sell drugs. He'll probably go back to selling drugs again.
Yeah.
So what's the purpose of locking him up for 20 years if when you're going to release him, he's got nothing? Our penal system is the worst in the world. Got a guy who was fighting to get back to his country, Sweden. Okay? He gets back. Instead of an iron-barred cell, he has a little apartment with a refrigerator, a stove. He can cook his own food, curtains on the windows, and have conjugal visits. Now, you know, in Norway, there's a guy that killed 91 people, got 21 years. That's it. In the United States, these sentences that they're applying to people are crazy. And, you know, at one time there was, I think there was 250,000 federal inmates. Now there's millions. Why lock up all these people and not help them? If you're going to put person behind bars, what is that? Is that what you want to do? You want to make him fester and become angry and become hateful, and he gets out and then you put him back in the community? While he's in there, try to rehabilitate him. Try to give him a sense, try to build up his self-esteem. Give him a way out. Because you're taking away those years of his life. When he gets out, he needs to do something. And you need to do something for him. I mean, and by the way, boy, this is an egotistical statement. It could be solved so fucking easy. Overnight it could be solved. But they don't want to do it. And you want to keep these people in prison. Now, there are people that are in prison that should stay in prison, should never see the light of day again. But there's, I mean, the greater number, 90% of the people in prison don't deserve to have the sentences that they get. And if you're going to give them a lengthy sentence, say to yourself, I've got to do something for that human being so that when he leaves, he can become a member of society again, and he has some self-worth, he has some self-esteem, and can go on and live a normal life. Don't take a kid 20 years old, give him 20 years, he's 40 years old, he doesn't know how to do anything. And then tell him when he gets out, you got to find yourself a job. Otherwise, we're going to put you back in prison again.
Why not? I mean, men feel good about themselves when they acquire skills, when they're good at something, when they do something.
Sure.
Make something. Why wouldn't you use prison sentences to have inmates do something useful, work?
Well, that's the interesting thing. There used to be a organization called Unicor where you would learn skills.
Yeah.
But they took that all away.
Why?
You got to ask the United States government that question, because there's no logical answer for that. You give these people some skills, they work every day, they earn some money, they'll be able to send some money to their families for their kids, and they feel good about themselves. You know, I made $200 this month, which is nothing, right? I was able to send $100 to my wife so she could buy my kids some clothes. And he feels like a man again. He feels good again. Give them that opportunity. There's nothing like that in this country.
Did you work at all? I mean, is there any meaningful work whatsoever?
There's no meaningful work. No, you have to have some form of a job, and I worked and watched gauges in the power room, and wrote down the numbers on the gauges, or I swept ice off of the around the ice machine, or I swept floors, or I mopped floors, or cleaned the toilet. I did all those things, and you get, let's see, 13 cents an hour or something like that.
Oh.
It's so easy to fix all that. It's so easy. And by the way, instead of outsourcing things to other countries, allow the guys in prison to do those things. Set them up with machinery to do those things. Set them up with sewing machines to do those things. You got garments that you're creating outside the country, give it to the prisoners. Let them do it. Teach them a trade. Teach them something so when they come out, they feel good about themselves and they can walk back into society and say, you know what, I did my time, now I'm ready to enter society again, and I have a way of making a living. I can make myself feel like a man again, or a woman again.
Seems like you'd have less disorder within the prison too if people had something useful to do.
Well, there's no doubt about that. You wouldn't have the drug usage, you wouldn't have the acrimony, you wouldn't have one faction against the other, you wouldn't have all that.
Did you ever feel afraid while you were away?
No. I really have no fear of nothing. And you come into obviously you come into situations where you have to defend yourself, and you do. And like any other man, if somebody accosts you, you defend yourself. Even if you get the shit kicked out of you, you understand? They say, I can respect him. The guys that didn't fight back got no respect, and they got abused all the time. So if somebody 6'2", or 250 pounds comes up and wants to fight you, you fight him, because he'll respect you after that, and everybody else will. And if you get the reputation in prison for being weak, it follows you wherever you go. You get the reputation of being a rat, follows you wherever you go. Whatever you do, in the presence of all of these other inmates, follows you. So, you have to be a man. You have to stand up.
Did you ever run into anyone you knew before while you were in prison?
Not knew before, knew of before, but not knew before.
Oh, knew of before.
Excuse me?
People you knew of before were there?
Yeah, sure. Especially Italians.
Did you fit right with? So there was an Italian community in the prisons.
There's more in the East Coast and Chicago and all that. California is very little. In Texas, like nothing. But yeah, but they like the diesel therapy people. You know what that means?
No.
Make them move from one place to another place to another place to another place. So you never really get comfortable. You never can settle down. They like doing that too. That's another way to try to get you to talk, Artie. Put you on a bus and you go stay in this county jail, and that county jail, and that county jail, until you finally get your destination. There's all kinds of ways to mistreat you, and like I told you, you deal with human beings, anything is possible. And you get, $50,000 a year, babysitters, which most guards are, you know what I mean? They don't give a shit about you. They don't care anything about you. They want to go through their shift with the least amount of trouble, you understand, and not have to worry about anything and go home to their families. They don't care about you. This is the one word, the one four-letter word that I try to teach everybody. In order to get anything to change, you have to have that four-letter word, care. You have to care.
Yeah. Guys
are talking in prison about getting out. You know what I mean? I said, you need to have somebody on the outside who cares, to go to somebody of a higher power who cares, to go to a congressman who cares, who go to a senate who cares, who writes a bill who cares. If there's nobody along that line that cares, you're sitting here, pal. You're not going anywhere. I don't care how many lawyers tell you they can do this or do that. Lawyers, another subject. But, you know, you're not going to get anybody to help you unless they care.
It's true. Last question. You said child molesters, rats. Where would you put lawyers on the hierarchy of badness?
Oh, well, the problem with criminal defense lawyers is that they promise things that they know they can't deliver. And when you're representing somebody who is guilty, you understand, you have to tell them the truth. You have to say to them, this is the situation. I'm going to do everything in my power to defend you. But the one thing that lawyers do that is abhorrent to me is they lie to their clients. They give them a sense of hope when they shouldn't.
Yes.
You understand? I don't want them to be rats, by the way. I don't want them to tell on their fellow, you know, committers. But, you know, you just, I'll give you one scenario. A guy comes up to me, a lot of people came up to me and wanted me to help them, okay? And I stood clear of everybody when I first went to prison. But one guy kept coming to me and says, you know, I need help. You know, can you please help me? I said, I'm not interested in your case. You know, find your lawyer and all that. He says, but I've been trying. My mother and father have been trying to get in touch with my lawyer, and he won't return their calls. So I just walk away. He keeps coming to me. One day, he caught me in a good mood, and he says, please. He says, my mother and father keep calling my lawyer, and he won't return their phone calls. I says, well, when's the last time you saw your lawyer? He says, 3 years ago. I says, what? He says, 3 years ago. I said, you haven't seen your lawyer for 3 years? No. Well, your mother and father are calling him? Yes. I said, I don't believe you. I said, you tell your mother and father to send me 3 months of phone bills. And you go downstairs and you get 3 months of phone bills. You understand? I want to see them. Well, he did. I'm making a long story short. He came back and he showed that the mother and father were calling the lawyer's office, 2-minute calls, 3-minute calls, 5-minute calls, and not getting the lawyer to communicate with them. So I write a letter for him to the judge. 2 days later, the judge, who was a great judge, by the way, calls him in the court. And the prosecutor's there and his lawyer's there. And he says, Madam Prosecutor, do you remember what I told you the last time you were here? Well, Your Honor, she starts making excuses. I said, would you believe me? I make notes. Would you believe me if I told you what I told you? She said, well, of course, Your Honor. I told you to work out a plea deal for this young man. And now you're his lawyer. When's the last time you saw him? Well, Your Honor, I don't want to hear the bullshit. I want to know, when's the last time you saw him? Well, 3 years ago. That was the day that you were in court and I told you to work out with the prosecutor, you know, a plea agreement? Yes. So you haven't talked to your client or communicated?
And the kid's been sitting in jail this whole time?
Yeah, yes. 5 years. Okay. So he looks at them both, you know, and he admonishes them and he says, young man, how long have you been in? He says, 5 years, Your Honor. He says, time served. Walked out the door that day.
Wow.
Because of my letter. And I've done a lot of things like that for people while I was in. Interesting little common sense scenarios where their lawyers weren't doing what they needed to do for them, and I helped them out. But that's a reoccurring story. What a
betrayal!
Well, not only a betrayal, but how insensitive can it possibly be? You took money from this man's mother and father to represent this kid, and you don't see him for 3 years?
Yes, so you should be in jail for that.
He doesn't practice very well these days. So.
On that happy note of justice, Anthony Pellicano, most interesting conversation I've had in a long time.
Thank you.
You are interesting, very interesting,
Thank you.
and I appreciate your coming on. Thank you.
My pleasure. My absolute.